Hi, I'm the Grow Boss, and this is Cannabis Hotline. This is a show where we can talk about anything about cannabis that you have questions about. For instance, you want to start growing, or you're growing and have questions. I wrote the Grow Book and Equipment Guide, so we can talk about growing. And that's exactly what this next caller is all about, because he wants the max yield possible for his space. So listen in as we go over the reality of the grow.
Hello?
Yes, sir. And so what can I do for you today?
All right, so basically I'm planning to build a completely sealed grow room with the outside dimensions of the room being 10 feet by 18 feet. So the inside dimensions of the room are going to be slightly smaller, factoring in the width of the studs and stuff like that. So basically the inside dimensions of the room is going to be 82 inches in height and 112 inches in width and 18 feet minus 8 inches. You get what I'm saying? So
yeah, so 9 by 18 by 7. That's close enough.
Yep, just about.
Yes.
And I'm in Massachusetts, so they just passed that we can grow 12 plants in our household. So what I'm trying to figure out is the best setup to maximize yield, and obviously quality goes into other factors, but to maximize the yield for 12 plants in the space that I'm working with.
Okay.
Mainly the amount of lighting that I'm going to need. I purchased 2 Solar Revolution light movers. I got 4 3x6 trays, and my plan was to put 3 plants on each tray across the room, across the 4 trays to equal 12 plants. I'm going to be getting CO2 tanks, drip system, air conditioning, what else? Yeah, all that stuff. And so I'm having trouble figuring out the optimum amount of lighting that I'm going to need to maximize the yield and profit from that setup, those amount of plants.
Okay,
that's
what
my
size
main question.
Okay, what size trays did you say you had?
3x6.
3x6. How many did you buy?
4.
Okay.
Because I want to have room to walk around the outside of the room. So
yeah, I doubt you'll ever use them, and I doubt you're going to use CO2 tanks. I'm pretty sure you're never going to buy a drip system, and I doubt you're going to use the Solar Revolution movers. So let's start with the initial goal of max yield. And for max yield, what we're talking about in your space is like you have 9 by 18, so you can do 2 4x4 tables wide and 4, 8, 12, 16. So 4, 8, 12, 16. You could do 4 by spaces long for a total of 8. I suspect that you're going to end up with 6 lights in this room. But I got to tell you, I don't think that's the approach, because I'm looking at the picture that you're showing me, and in the top corner, I see a window up there. Are you going to put an AC up there?
No, I'm building a room inside of this room.
Yes, I understand that, but I'm looking at the room at the moment, and you're going to have to put an AC in the room. So the question is, I'm looking at a perfectly good room to grow in. It's even made better by having a window to put an AC in. So why are you building a room inside this room instead of using this room?
To be discreet, the floor is carpeted. I don't want to damage any of I rent my home, so I don't want to damage any of the walls, any of the ceiling, the carpet, anything like that.
So why don't you just buy like a tent frame or something? I mean, you can hang the light.
A tent's more expensive than building an actual room.
No, it's probably not going to be more expensive, and it's definitely more convenient in your case. When you ask me for the maximum yield, and I'm looking at the picture of the room that you show me, if you're going to have to cover the floor, then to protect the carpet, I don't see why you wouldn't just cover the floor. And I don't know how you're going to cover the floor, because if you use the panda paper, that bisqueen, that plastic paper, you're going to just eventually slip and break a hip. And if you try to cover the whole floor, you're never going to like it. And if you try to build a structure, it never really turns out the way you think. And if you're good enough to build a structure, you usually overbuild it. And again, you turn into a builder instead of a grower. Because the room you have, from my perspective, it looks fantastic. I would put a big AC in that window, and I would put 6 lights in this room. But we have many more problems before you even begin building. Because if you have and you said 72-inch, how high was your ceiling? You said 72-inch?
82.
82, so 7 feet.
6 feet 10.
So you have a 7-foot ceiling, so you can't use trays, because if you put a 1-foot hood off your 7-foot ceiling, you now have a 6-foot. And if a tray is 2 feet off the ground, you're starting 4 feet from the plant. And if you add a bucket, you're going to be 3 feet away before you even turn the light on. So I doubt you're going to use trays. And if you lower the room any by your structure, you're already out of room. And then when you tell me you have a 12 plant count limit, you are absolutely not going to be using trays if you want them as big as possible. So let's take a step back and let's ask about veg. Are you going to be vegging in this same space and then flowering?
Yes.
Okay. And if you're going to do that, you definitely are going to divide this space up with a couple of tents. You're not going to be building anything, and you're definitely not going to be using tables. Because if you don't have a separate veg, that means you're going to have to veg and flower in the same space. And at the very least, if you were to take 12 plants and veg them for 4 weeks and then flower them for 8 weeks, you would probably need 2 600s, maybe 1,000 on a light mover. So you are very far away in your initial estimate of components and rotation from your desired statement of a maximum yield. You are very far apart between those two. Because frankly, in this space, what I see is 2 4x8s and a 5x5 veg, maybe, you could do 3 4x8s, 3 4x8 tents. And you're not really going to be able to, I suspect you're not going to be able to do anything more than 3 4x8s in the space. And 4x8s are cheap. And I don't think you're going to be putting 1,000 watts in them. I think you're going to put 2 600s or 1,000 watt on a light mover. I don't think you're going to end up with what you started off with, and that's probably going to be a big deal, because if you put 3 4x8 tents in there, you can veg 4 plants. It would be a difficult thing. You'd have to veg them big. But you would have to veg 6 plants and put 3 in each tent, because you have you said 12 plant count limit, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you have 12 plants, you're going to have a very long veg. And I suspect that you're going to be into this for 3 4x8s. I don't see how you would take advantage of this space any other way. And you can build stuff. I mean, you could build 3 spaces for it. But if you don't have a veg and you try to do this on table, and if you do this with hydro, then you are now 3 steps away from being successful, as far as I can tell. Because if you look at that picture that I post up quite frequently, I show you what 15 plants under 2 lights looks like. And that's 15 plants under 2 lights with a 4-week veg. If you have a longer veg, you would have fewer plants. So you would be heading toward those 3 large plants under 2 lights. That would be your veg. And then, you'd have 6 plants in veg, and then you would move 3 into each tent. And tents, I got to tell you, with your ceiling, you are coming right up against the height of a tent. And a tent or your room does not allow for very big plants. It allows for wide plants. So you might end up with 1 tent in veg and then 3 lights in flower, maybe, 1,000 watt on a mover in veg, and maybe 3,000 watts just hanging from the ceiling because you can't put tents in there. You're going to, either way, you're going to have to put an AC in that window, or you're going to have to run a dual duct either way. But if you buy a dual duct portable unit, those things are $500, and I don't think it's going to cool the amount of lights that you have. And if you put one in the window, it will probably cost you like $200 less, maybe $399, maybe $100 less. And you can literally buy a 1-ton unit that looks like it'll fit in that window or something close to it that stands a chance. But I don't have an answer for you if you're going to build your own space, unless you're going to build 3 4x8 tents and you separate the room into a veg and a flower. But soon as you try to convert this space, the cost-value relationship of how much yield you can achieve plummets. It goes down. And I don't think you're ever going to be able to get the yield that you're looking for building something and vegging and flowering in the same space. It's too many things against you.
Okay. So is there a maximum amount of lights as far as wattage of lighting, as far as wattage per plant that I need? Like,
no.
Is there a level? Yep.
No. I think you have that completely backward. I don't care how many plants you grow. You can do 98 per 2 lights. You can do 15 plants per 2 lights. You can do 3 plants per 2 lights, like in those pictures I show you. But there's a longer veg. I mean, you're going to veg for 1 week, 4 weeks, or 10 weeks. And the longer the veg, the bigger the plant, the fewer you need. So when you say max light, I hear kill the plant. What I would prefer to hear you say is minimum light. Because if you give the plants max light, they'll do what everybody does. You'll kill them.
Yeah, so is there an amount of light that I don't want to go over per plant?
Yes, too much.
You know what I mean?
I don't have, it would be like asking me what RPM you should be at when driving. I don't know. Is it a 4? Is it a 6? Is it an 8 cylinder? Do you have a turbo? Are you up a hill? Are you towing something? I can't give you that. I can tell you that a 1,000-watt light should be over a 5x5 space, 2 feet deep, full of canopy. I don't care if you do that with 3 plants, 15 plants, or 98 plants. I don't care how many plants you have. That's irrelevant. What happens is if you put a 1,000-watt light over not enough plant canopy, you kill it with too much light. That's the game. So it's a difficult question to ask, like buying a car and saying, hey, I got to drive home. What gear should I be in? How would the guy, there's no way for them to know that. And I don't mean that to get out of answering you. I mean to say that there's no way for me to...
what you just said answered it. Like if I put too much light, it's going to kill the plant.
Right.
That's what I'm wondering.
Right. So think of it like shifting gears. If you're at 1,000 watts in week 10, you'll be at 100 watts in week 1. And at week 5, you'll be at 500 watts. And I don't care if you do 600 watts at 5 feet or 500 watts at 4 feet. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same thing depending on distance. And we also don't know what shape hood you have. And we don't know several factors. So
yeah, different lights require different distances and all that.
I would say that different hood shapes, because we're asking about a 1,000-watt HID light. So I'm just assuming that you've got an Ushio bulb in a 1,000-watt ballast. Don't care digital or magnetic ballast. What changes is the hood shape. Because if you buy a supersized hood, you're probably not going to buy a light mover, and you're probably going to do a scrog. If you buy a small hood, you're probably going to do taller plants, or you're going to put them on light movers and do a scrog. Scrogs keep the plant short.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm telling you that if you can't do big plants because you have a ceiling restriction, then you're definitely not going to have a long veg. If you don't have a long veg, you're not growing big plants, and your plant count just went up. Because the shorter the veg, the more plants you need. Now, you could just do something super easy and enjoy yourself, like 3 600-watt lights and 5x5 tents. Each light, 1 tent. You do 1 tent for veg, and you do 2 tents for flower.
So I want twice as much space for the flowering.
Plants get twice as big, so you definitely want twice as much space, yes.
Okay.
Now, if you wanted a little more, you would step it up to 3 4x8s with 2 600s or 1 1000 on a light mover in each. But you're really not limited by the space at this point because you're limited by ceiling height and plant count. Those are the 2 restrictions in your world. If you had 2 more feet, you'd knock it out of the park. You could veg them big. You could veg them for 8 weeks and grow them 5 feet tall. But you don't have the height. And when you don't have the height, you have to increase plant count. And when you increase plant count, I've already now on the literally your second concern, I've railroaded it. Because if you've got 12 plants, that's 6 in veg and 3 in each of the 2 flower areas, or 6 in veg and 6 in flower, depending if you do a 2 or 3 light rotation. But that's only if you've separated veg from flower. Because if you don't separate veg from flower and you do them all in the same room, well, if you have a 4-week veg, it's going to take you 12 weeks to finish. And if you have a 6-week veg, it's going to take you 14 weeks to finish. And if you have an 8-week veg, it'll take you 2 months to veg and 2 months to flower. So you'll have a 16-week harvest. So it's a big consideration on whether you switch from one to the other. So in your case, because of your ceiling height and all this restriction, in my view, I see 1 600-watt veg and 2 600-watt flowers. You could do more, but if you do 3 tents with 1,600 watts, I suspect in Michigan you could probably not even buy an AC during winter. Just open that window.
Okay. So 3 4x8 tents would be the way to go.
3 4x8s would be max, but
Okay.
you're pushing plant size. Because remember, you're going to have 6 plants in veg, which means you're going to have 3 in each flower tent for a total of 12 plants. That's a big plant to do in veg. I mean, if you've got 3 plants vegging, well, 6 vegging, but there's an alternate schedule, so they're 6 or 8 weeks apart. So when you're finishing 3 in veg, you'll be finishing 3 plants 5 feet tall. Then when you go into flower, you're going to take those 3 plants, move them into 1 tent. You're going to lower them into a trellis, like you see in my trellis video. And then the other 3 plants that were in flower, you're going to transplant from a 1-gallon bucket to a 3. You're going to take cuttings off the plants that you just flowered, or the ones in veg, don't care. And you're going to take cuttings from them and have to start 3 more cuttings. Because every 4 weeks, you're going to have to take cuttings, transplant from a 1 to a 3, so they can stay in veg, transplant from a 3 to a 7, and move them into flower. When you have a 3 light rotation, there's no other. When it's 3 light, 3 space, 2 light rotation like you have. But again, you could do 2 600s or 1,000 on a light mover in each tent. It doesn't matter to me. Same thing. What's nice about the 3 600s is you only have 2 lights on at a time, 1,200 watts. You could probably cool them with the window open. If you do 3,000s, then you're going to have 2,000 watts on. You have to check the circuit at that point because you may have to consider adding, bringing an electrical cord from another room or running a box. And if you're trying not to change the house, 3 600 is the answer because if you have a 20 amp circuit, you can't do 2,000. And if you have 25 amp circuit, 2,000 watts. That's coming up on 80%, 100% duty cycle. The wires could get hot. And if you add a fan or ACE or any fans and you add another 200 or 300 watts worth of fans, then suddenly you're at 2,500 watts. And 2,500 watts makes a 100% duty cycle. And I never suggest using electricity at a 100% rate. Burn everything down.
Okay.
So 3 600s. And now that you see that you're in 3 600, and when we go back to the original equipment list, you might do the CO2 tanks. You're definitely not going to do a drip system. You might do the AC. You're definitely not going to do 2 solo revolution light movers. You're definitely not going to need 4 3x6 tables. And you're definitely not going to be building a shelter for them. And you're at £1 a month, just so you have a little bit of something to be excited about. You're at £1 a month.
Okay. So what do you think the maximum per plant I'll get with that setup?
Well, if you do 1 plant, you'll get £1. If you do 2 plants, you'll get a ½ pound each. If you do 3 plants, you'll get a third pound each. Yeah. No, you get £1 from
just
a 600-watt light.
Yeah.
You get £1 from a 600-watt light on average if you do a good job. Don't care what nutrients you use. Don't care. If you add a light mover, you'll get 25%. If you add CO2, you'll get 25% more. And since a 600-watt really only requires a 4x4 tent, if you buy a 5x5 tent, you'll have enough room to add CO2. But remember, if you expect 25% more, either you have to add a plant or you have to veg them 25% bigger. So consider that, because you can't put 25% more weight on the same plant. You physically have to grow them larger, because if a plant can only produce X and you expect 1.25X, then you have to grow 1.25X plant. So you'll have to grow them a little bigger. But that's fine, because you have your own veg space. You can grow them as big as you want.
All right.
Okay. So we have about 8-10 minutes left on this half-hour consult. Yeah. So let's focus on what I can do to better help you target, or if you disagree with me, what I can do to help you clear up the difference between what you're feeling and what I'm thinking.
I'm just debating whether I want to.
I know. I'm so sorry. I mean, I'm happy for you because you got the information.
I shattered all my hopes and dreams.
I know.
I'm just kidding.
I know. And I look at this picture and I see that blank piece of paper in the middle of the room. And then I look at the equipment around the edge and I'm like, uh-oh, here's a guy who's planning something. But I'm super glad you're receptive, at least, to the information. And you can see a little bit of the window that you have, 3 4x8s or 3 5x5s. And you could section off one part of the room so it's 5 deep, put a door in it, and you could put 2 600s or 2,000s in there and veg with 1,000, but then you go back to the electrical thing. So you have a couple of options. Yes, sir.
I mean, wiring more circuits and stuff like that can be done if I need to. But
you could also just run one extension cord, like an AWG12, from another room, and you can light up one light with that. And you know what I mean? And now you've taken 600 watts out of the circuit. So if you find a different circuit, you can run one extension cord. But if you go up to thousands, you're just gonna run a box. Just get the wire. So let me ask you this, and it's a group question, and I just want an honest answer. Do you know how to grow?
I've never grown before. Nope. I've just done studying.
Okay. Let me put this in a different perspective for you. You have a choice if you want to learn how to grow. If you'd like to learn how to grow, get 3 lights and 3 tents and a smaller system. For instance, if you just want to learn how to grow, you could do that thing in my videos with 3 2x4x5 tents and 3 4-foot 8-bulb T5 from Nickel City. Or you could buy 3 5x5 tents, because they're only like $15 more than a 4x4. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. And you could put 3 12 bulbs or 3 16 bulbs in them. Far less heat, way more appropriate, and much easier. You're just growing buckets. It's much more appropriate for your plant count and skill level. And I know 1,000-watt setups cost the same as 600 watt. And you could buy 3,000s and dim them and never turn them up. You could buy 3 600s and 3 5x5s. You can buy 3 400s and 3 4x4s. You can buy 3 4-foot 8-bulb T5s and little 2x4 tents and put them on the floor. Because frankly, if you want to learn how to do this, the most appropriate way for you is a 3-light rotation. Because it takes 6 harvests to get good. You kill the first one, you see the second one, you learn how to super crop the third one. Then you practice 3 more times. Now, if you only have 1 light where you veg and flower in the same space, it takes 3 months to harvest, so it's going to take you a year and a half to learn how to grow. If you have 2 lights, you'll get a harvest every 60 days, so it'll take you a year to grow. But
so more practice when I'm doing it, the more rotations that I have.
Yeah, and you can do it with 3 400s or 3 600s. It really, for me, the only thing that changes is yield. For instance, you buy 3 400-watt 4-foot 8-bulb T5s, 3 little tents. You get a half a pound a month. And if you do the math, 3 400s is 1,200 watts. And I tell you, you get 1.5 pounds from 1,000. And 1,000, that would be every 90 days. 1.5 pounds from 1,000 is a half pound a month from a 400. So I don't care if you have 3 400-watt lights or 1 1,000. Get the same friggin' yield. And the experience happens 3 times faster. And the reality is, you can't tell a 400-watt T5 bud from an LED bud from a 1,000-watt HID bud. The only thing that changes is yield, not the quality, because quality is based on grower talent. And if you don't know how to grow, quality is the last thing that you have to worry about, because you're going to kill them on the first round, you'll watch them grow on the second round, and by the third round, you'll understand how to do this. And for you, that'll be like 3-4 months with a 3-light rotation.
Now, does the broadness of the spectrum affect the quality of the plant?
Have you ever looked at a bud and said, are you a smoker? Do you smoke pot?
No, I don't even smoke.
Okay. None of it matters. It's all a lie. The spectrum doesn't matter. The nutrients don't matter. pH lockout is a lie. And anybody that tells you they want quality instead of yield is failing. Because the guys that grow and grow well know that you don't get quality without yield. And you don't get yield without quality. It would be like driving in the fast lane in second gear and wondering why you don't get the mileage the manufacturer promised. It's because you don't know how to use it properly. So you have a long way to go, because until you get the same weight 3 times in a row, how would you even know if switching nutrients mattered? Because yield is based on light. So who cares about the nutrients? So if you got a half pound from your 400-watt light 3 times in a row, if you switch nutrients, only then would I believe that you understood that nutrients are relative. Because if you get a half pound and you add an ounce because you switch to another different nutrient, there's so many. I mean, if you switch to a nutrient and you added a half ounce, spectacular. Then I would believe you. But until then, all it is promises from the manufacturer. Because in the photosynthesis equation, there are only 3 factors. Using light for energy, plants convert water and CO2 into sugar and oxygen. So there are only 3 inputs, light, water, and CO2. And if you add more light, you kill your plant. And if you add more water, you kill your plants. So the only thing left is CO2. That's why the nutrients are irrelevant, because plants use sugar to run all their other processes. And until you're good, how would you know if the spectrum mattered? Especially your first round when you're going to kill them. And in this room, you were so far away from the reality of the situation that even if you bought a spectrum that mattered, of which I know none, but even if you bought a spectrum that mattered, you would have killed it with the lights. You would have killed it by spending 10 times what you needed to. You would have killed it with your trays because your ceiling's too low. You would have killed it with the drip system because you wouldn't do hydro with your plant count. And so there would have been many, many, many ways for you to kill your shit. And that's why I tell you spectrum and nutrients don't matter. Worthless. Worthless. You could grow with T5s and you'd never know the difference.
Now that was a fast half hour. And if you've been listening to this series, you'll notice that this call ended like all the others. The information that you have is so far apart from the reality of the grow. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because the guys that are good aren't posting on the net. They're doing their thing. They might make some videos, but the guys that are good are not posting on the net. And if I'm telling you that 99% of people that start growing cannabis fail at growing cannabis, then it's probably going to be pretty hard for you to get good information. Okay, I'm the Grow Boss, and if you have any questions about your garden, I'm always available to you. And if you're looking to have one of these videos so you can visualize what you're going to do in your garden, hey, when you set the appointment, we'll see if we can do that for you too. All right, I'm the Grow Boss. Thanks for listening.